Today I will analyze 264 ETFs across 5 crucial metrics to find the best ETFs for different investment goals. Whether you want the lowest fees, the highest returns, the best dividends, or the most well-rounded option, by the end of this video you'll know exactly which ETF to choose based on what matters most to you. Making the wrong choice could cost you tens of thousands of dollars over your investing lifetime. And let's not forget that there is no single best ETF. It depends on what you are optimizing for. Some ETFs have rock bottom fees but mediocre returns. Others have incredible track records but high expense ratios. Some pay fantastic dividends but have poor growth. Most investors don't have time to analyze hundreds of funds across multiple metrics to find the perfect match. But I have all the time in the world, so I will analyze 264 ETFs in 5 crucial categories: expense ratios, 10-year returns, 5-year returns, dividend yields, and dividend growth. We'll break down what each metric means, reveal the winners in each category, and then unveil the ultimate ETF that scored highest across all the metrics. Let's start with an expense ratio. It is the annual fee you pay to own an ETF, expressed as a percentage of your investment. For example, if an ETF has a 0.5% expense ratio and you invested $10,000, you will pay $50 per year in fees. If another ETF has a 0.05 expense ratio, you will only pay $5 annually on the same $10,000. Lower expense ratios mean more money stays in your pocket and compounds over time. The difference might seem small, but over decades, it adds up significantly. That's why expense ratio is one of the most important factors when choosing an ETF. Here we have the top 10 ETFs when it comes to fees. 10th place goes to Vanguard FTSE Developed Markets Index Fund ETF with an expense ratio of just 0.03%. Just to put things into perspective, the ETF with the worst expense ratio out of 264 that I looked at had an expense ratio of 0.95%, almost 1%. That's crazy. 9th is Spider Portfolio S&P 1500 Composite Stock Market ETF, also 0.03%. 8th is Spider Portfolio Developed World excluding US ETF. 7th place goes to Schwab US Large Cap ETF, also with an expense ratio of 0.03%. 6th is Schwab International Equity ETF. And 5th is Schwab US Broad Market ETF. Then 4th place goes to iShares Core S&P 500 ETF, and all have the same 0.03% expense ratio. And now we get to the podium places. 3rd is iShares Core S&P Total US Stock Market ETF. 2nd is iShares Morningstar US Equity ETF, also 0.03%. And the best ETF when it comes to expense ratio is Spider Portfolio S&P 500 ETF with just 0.02%. Great, so this was the first metric. Now let's take a look at 10-year total return. And this metric shows you how much money your ETF investment made over the past 10 years, including both price appreciation and dividends. So that is another key metric, especially for long-term investors that just want to buy an ETF and forget about it for decades. 10th place goes to iShares Global Tech ETF with 497% in 10 years. That's very impressive, and we are only at number 10. 9th is SPDR New York Stock Exchange Technology ETF with 524%. 8th position is occupied by Fidelity MSCI Information Technology Index ETF, and it had a return of 547%. 7th best ETF when it comes to total returns in the last 10 years is iShares Expanded Tech Sector ETF with a return of 549%. 6th is Invesco Semiconductors ETF with 558%, and the 5th best ETF is the Technology Select Sector SPDR Fund ETF with 559%. 4th place goes to Vanguard Information Technology Index Fund ETF shares with 560%. And so far, we only get tech and semiconductor ETFs in this category. It says a lot about the recent decade. And here are the podium places. 3rd is iShares US Technology ETF with 575%. 2nd is iShares Semiconductor ETF with incredible returns of 717%. And the first place goes to VanEck Semiconductor ETF with a total return in 10 years that is absolutely outstanding, 984%. Well, those results just show that investing in ETFs does not have to equal average returns. The best S&P 500 ETF from Vanguard, ticker symbol VOO, was 43rd on our list with 245%. So a huge difference here. Okay, let's take a look at 5-year total returns. The reason we are looking at this shorter time frame is that some of you may want to use an ETF for short-term goals. Maybe you are saving for a house down payment, a wedding, or a great vacation in 3 to 5 years, and you want your money to grow faster than in a savings account. However, it is crucial to understand that past results do not guarantee future results. We are only looking at what already happened, not predicting that it will happen again. An ETF that performed amazingly over the past 5 years might struggle in the next 5 years. So always take this risk into account. That said, 5-year returns still give us valuable insight into how these ETFs have performed in a more recent market environment, which can help inform our decisions. So the 10th ETF with the best 5-year total return is VanEck Uranium and Nuclear ETF with 189%. 9th place goes to iShares US Broker Dealers and Securities Exchanges ETF with 193%. 8th is Alerian Energy Infrastructure ETF with 5-year returns of 206%. 7th is Global X MLP and Energy Infrastructure ETF with 228%. A lot of energy ETFs so far. 6th place goes to SPDR S&P Metals and Mining ETF with a result of 230%. 5th is Global X MSCI Greece ETF with 237%. 4th place goes to First Trust RBA American Industrial Renaissance ETF with a very nice 243%. Third is Global X MSCI Argentina ETF with 275%. And second place is occupied by Van Eck Semiconductor ETF with 278%. And finally, the first place goes to Global X Uranium ETF with a very impressive 310% in just 5 years. So in the last 5 years, we see a lot less technology ETFs, but rather energy and mining is dominating. Okay, and now let's go to the two metrics that are very important to all the dividend investors. First, 4-year average dividend yield. This metric shows how much income an ETF has paid out to investors each year, averaged over the past 4 years. For example, if an ETF has a 3% average dividend yield and you invested $10,000, you will receive $300 per year in dividend payments. That's cash deposited directly into your account. We look at 4-year average instead of just 1 year because dividend payments can fluctuate. Some years might be high, some lower, so the average gives you a more realistic picture of the income you can expect. This metric is especially important for investors who want their investments to generate regular income. 10th place in this ranking goes to Alerian Energy Infrastructure ETF with a 4-year average dividend yield of 5.61%. 9th is First Trust Dow Jones Global Select Dividend Index Fund ETF with 5.78%. 8th place goes to First Trust Stocks European Select Dividend Index Fund ETF with 5.79% 4-year average dividend yield. 7th is First Trust Index Global Natural Resources Income ETF at 6.31%. I like the names, they are easy to remember and very catchy. 6th is iShares International Select Dividend ETF with a 4-year average dividend yield of 6.37%. 5th place is occupied by Global X MSCI Colombia ETF with 6.43%. 4th goes to iShares Currency Hedged MSCI Eurozone ETF with a very impressive 7.18%. And now the podium places. 3rd is iShares Latin America 40 ETF with 7.46%. 2nd goes to iShares MSCI Brazil ETF with a whopping 8.33%. And the first place goes to iShares MSCI Taiwan ETF with an 8.4% 4-year average dividend yield. That is super impressive. So when it comes to dividend yield, we have mainly ETFs that concentrate on a specific region or country. Okay, and now it's time for the final metric, 5 years dividend growth rate, which shows an annual growth rate of an ETF's dividend payments over the past 5 years. For example, if an ETF has 10% annual dividend growth over 5 years, it means that dividend payments have grown by an average of 10% each year. It's like getting a raise on your dividend income. Higher dividend growth means your passive income keeps increasing year after year. Also here, it is super important to remember that the future results may look nothing like the past. This growth may continue, but it does not have to. Okay, 10th place goes to iShares Morningstar Midcap Growth ETF with an already very impressive growth of 36.5%. 9th is iShares MSCI Mexico ETF with 36.7%. 8th goes to Invesco DB Precious Metals Fund ETF with an annual dividend growth of 37.26%. 7th is iShares MSCI France ETF with 37.86%. 6th place is taken by Amplify Junior Silver Miners ETF with 38.11%. And 5th is Van Eck Junior Gold Miners ETF with an incredible growth of 46.74%. 4th is Sprott Junior Gold Miners ETF with 58.26%. Third step of the podium is occupied by iShares MSCI Austria ETF with 65.1% annual growth. Second place goes to CraneShares SCI China Internet ETF with a dividend growth of 65.48%. And the first place goes to Invesco China Technology ETF with an astounding growth of 83.94%. Now, it is important to always look at the history of each ETF to understand why it may have such an incredible growth. If we go to Seeking Alpha, where I got all the data for this video from, and look at the dividend scorecard, we see it is 83.94%. But when we go to the dividend history, we see that the reason for this growth is that in 2019, the dividend fell so much that it was basically non-existent. So take all of those results with a grain of salt and always do your own due diligence. By the way, if you would like to get access to all the data and tools that Seeking Alpha has to offer while also saving some money, you can use my affiliate link in the description below. Not only will you get a great deal, but you will be also supporting this channel at the same time. Okay, so it's time for the final results. Let's add all the points and find out which ETF is the best one overall. 10th best ETF is Spider Portfolio S&P 500 ETF with 20 points. 9th is Global X MLP and Energy Infrastructure ETF with 21 points. 8th is First Trust RBA American Industrial Renaissance ETF with 22 points. 7th place goes to Global X MSCI Argentina ETF, also with 22 points. At number 6, we have iShares US Technology ETF with 23 points. And now we get to the top 5. 5th is Alerian Energy Infrastructure ETF, 24 points. It was 8th when it comes to the 5-year total returns and 10th when it comes to 4-year average dividend yield. So you get the best of both worlds. Nice growth and a big dividend. 4th goes to CraneShares SCI China Internet ETF with 28 points. It has 12th best 4-year average dividend yield and 2nd best growth. So if you are looking for some passive income, this may be an interesting ETF to take a look at. And the lowest step of the podium is occupied by Global X Uranium ETF, also 28 points. This ETF has the best 5-year total returns and it was 13th when it comes to dividend growth in the last 5 years. So also here we may find a mix of both strategies. Second is iShares Semiconductor ETF, also with 28 points. It was second when it comes to best total returns in 10 years and also 12 when we were looking at the returns in a shorter 5-year time frame. So here we get a nice growth all the way through, so the volatility is rather small. And the best overall ETF in our ranking is Van Eck Semiconductor ETF with a very impressive 39 points. This ETF has the best result when it comes to 10 years total return and second place when we look at 5 years time frame. So it is all about growth and creating steady results in different financial conditions. If you enjoyed this video, please consider pressing the like button. It helps the channel more than you think. And you may also want to check out a video in which I ranked 71 REITs to find the best option for passive income. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.